probably in 2025, we at Meta, as well as the other companies that are basically working on this, are going to have an AI that can effectively be a sort of mid-level engineer that you have at your company that can write code. And once you have that, then in the beginning it'll be really expensive to run, and then you can get it to be more efficient. And then over time we'll get to the point where a lot of the code in our apps and including the AI that we generate is actually going to be built by AI engineers instead of people engineers.
So that clip has been circulating in the AI community. And in this video, I'm going to take a different perspective than the ones you've likely been seeing. I believe most people aren't fully grasping the true dynamics of what's being discussed here, even when interpreting the clip at face value. It's crucial to understand the nuances of what's actually being said, and that's exactly what this video aims to explore. This is, of course, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, talking about how, by 2025, AI is expected to significantly impact the way code is developed. Now, I agree with him to a certain extent, but when we dig deeper, things might not be quite as they appear. In the first part of this video, I'm going to align with the majority opinion and acknowledge that there's a plausible scenario where most coding is still being done by engineers. Importantly, Zuckerberg isn't the only leader of a billion-dollar company to suggest this. However, later in the video, I'll delve into why most people are missing the most critical aspect of this statement and why the reality might be more complex than it seems. But as I was saying, this is not the only person at a billion-dollar company in the higher-ups who has said this. Amazon last year in 2024, in a leaked conversation, not something we were even supposed to know, revealed some striking thoughts. The Amazon cloud chief told employees that most developers could stop coding as soon as AI takes over. This was shared during an internal fireside chat in June. Business Insider obtained a recording of the meeting, and that's how this information became public. Now, this was a pretty crazy revelation as part of the Post-AGI economic series, where I talk about how technology is evolving in ways that will reshape the economy, and of course the roles we currently have. The reason I'm bringing this back into the context of this video is that statements like these keep surfacing again and again. On the surface, it does sound bleak. There were even more detailed statements made during the conversation. For example, here's a screenshot from that. The Amazon cloud chief said, "If you go forward 24 months from now, which would be June 2026, or some amount of time, I can't predict exactly where it will be, but it's possible that most developers won't be coding." And this comes from the person who became Amazon CEO in June. He elaborated by saying, "Coding is simply the language we use to talk to computers. It's not necessarily a skill in itself. The skill is how to innovate and build something compelling for end users to engage with." Personally, I agree with this to some extent. I've looked at the numbers and analyzed the specific details. However, it's worth noting that he also stated that most developers, they're not coding. It doesn't say that. They're not working. Just simply that the role of developers may change now. Like I mentioned before, let's ignore the actual facts of what was said and focus on the numbers and where these systems stand in terms of their benchmarks. This will give us a quantitative view of where these systems are, regardless of what any CEO said about the specific topic. So, 4 to 5 months ago, in that same video, we saw the benchmarks we were looking at here, specifically SWE Bench, Software Engineering Bench. At the start of 2024, it was around 7%, and during that time it rose to around 38 to 40%. I'm doing this to show you where we are today. That was 5 months ago, and the highest score we got was about 38.8%. I believe the Cosine Genie 1 record may have been taken down due to an error, but let's stick with the fact that 5 months ago, the highest recorded score on the SWE Bench was around 38.8%. In that video, we were discussing how people might not be coding because AI will take over that role. We can look at that period 5 months ago and compare it to the improvements today. And now we see that the SWE Bench score is verified at 62%. It's almost double the actual performance on these models right here. You can see that recently, toward the end of 2024, CodeStory Midwit Plus SWE Search managed to get 62% on the SWE Bench. This is quite a hard benchmark to crack because it's not in the training data. It's not something they've seen before. It's actually a pretty decent benchmark. This is something you can see gradually improving every month by around 2% or so, or maybe 5%. So it's quite possible that in 2 years, this benchmark could be cracked. What's really crazy about all of this is that if we look at the most recent model, we see something unbelievable. Remember how I mentioned that we almost saw a jump? Well, here we can see on the O3 benchmark, and I apologize for the quality of this, but the SWE Bench verified benchmark shows that O3 gets 71.7%. I know it's barely visible, but it's 71.7%. So in just a year, the benchmarks have essentially doubled. This means that if we look ahead 18 months from now, it's very likely that we will have systems that could potentially get close to 100% or that level. I do believe this is possible, but will we have models that are cost-effective enough to be that useful? That's something we'll have to discuss, because of course, cost is a big factor, and we know that O3 is extremely expensive right now. As you know, over time, these models will continue to get cheaper and cheaper. But let's take a look at what they've said about the O3 model in terms of its coding performance. We can see that in comparison to O2, well, it's actually O3, but this is the second iteration of their model. On competitive platforms like Codeforces, this model is performing better and better. O3 is now in the top 1% of coders, which is absolutely remarkable, especially considering it's only the second iteration. In contrast, the first iteration, O1 Preview, wasn't that impressive. As I mentioned before, it's highly probable that O4, which will be the third iteration of the search models, will be released sometime in 2025. It's quite likely that the performance will improve even further. So take a look at the short video. It's pretty fascinating to hear what they discuss. But I actually want to circle back on something, because it's really interesting what OpenAI has to say about software engineers, and they touch on that shortly. But first, check out what they say about O3.
So on the left-hand side, we show the coding evals. So it's like Codeforces Elo, which measures how good a programmer is, and the higher is better. So as we can see on the plot, with more thinking time, O3 Mini is able to have like increasing Elo, all outperforming O1 Mini. And with like median thinking time, it's able to measure even better than O1.
Yeah, so it's like for an order of magnitude more speed and cost, we can deliver the same code performance on this eval,
or even better experience, right? So although it's like the O3 Mini High is still like a couple hundred points away from Mark, it's not far. It's better than me probably.
But just an incredible sort of cost to performance gain over what we've been able to offer with O1, and we think people will really love this.
Yeah, I hope so. So on the right-hand plot, we show the estimated cost versus Codeforces Elo trade-off. So it's pretty clear that O3 Mini defines like a new cost-efficient reasoning frontier on coding. So it's achieved like better performance, comparable better performance than O1 with a fraction of cost. Amazing.
As I mentioned earlier, we're going to take a closer look at what's being said about software engineers at OpenAI. The person you're seeing here is Noah Brown, the individual who worked on reasoning at OpenAI. He was primarily involved with the ZOA1 series, which is his area of expertise. He played a key role in developing the reasoning concept and how exploring new possibilities could drive improvement. In this brief interview clip, he discusses how O1 already functions much like a software engineer, offering a potential glimpse into the future of AI agents and systems within large companies. And, as I've pointed out before, this could be quite costly. But when we consider the average salary of a software engineer, if it's even a fraction of the $250,000 that these engineers are typically paid annually, it's very likely that, as long as it becomes more affordable than that, companies will see significant value in integrating AI systems.
O1 does feel, at least to me, and I think other people on our team, like a better coding partner than the other models. I think it's already authored a couple of PRs in our repo, and so in some ways it is acting like a software engineer, because I think software engineering is another one of these STEM domains that benefits from longer reasoning. I don't know. I think that the kinds of rollouts that we're seeing from the model are thinking for a few minutes at the time. I think the kinds of software engineering job that I do when I go and write code, I think for more than a few minutes at a time. And so maybe as we start to scale these things further, as we start to follow this trend line and let O1 think for longer and longer, it'll be able to do more and more of those tasks, and we'll see.
You'll be able to tell that we've achieved AGI internally when we take down all the job listings. And
now, at this point in the video, I'm going to revisit what I've been saying throughout the entire beginning, as I think there's a shift in perspective worth addressing. While figures like Mark Zuckerberg and the insiders at Amazon have stated that we might eventually reach a point where human coders are no longer necessary, that's quite a bold claim. Even if we find ourselves in a situation where the demand for software engineers isn't as high, I still believe that if you're a software engineer today, you'll likely be more valuable than ever before. And no, this isn't just to make you feel good. I've done extensive research on this, and the findings were quite surprising, even to me. Take a look at this, because this is where you need to focus. The World Economic Forum, WEF, recently released their Future of Jobs report for 2025. I'm not going to cover the entire report since it's packed with insights that would require a much longer video to break down. But pay attention to this key point. In their list of the fastest growing jobs, software and application developers are ranked as number 4. By 2030, these roles will be among the top in demand. The WF's job is to forecast and prepare the world for the future, and they're arguably the best positioned organization to do so. If they're predicting that software and application developers will be one of the fastest growing job roles in a post-AI, post-AGI world, it tells us something important about the future of software development. I don't believe software developers are becoming obsolete. In fact, the opposite is true for several reasons. You might be wondering, if AI systems are taking over coding, what will software developers even do? Let me introduce you to an economic paradox that's rarely discussed, the Jevons paradox. This principle states that when a resource becomes more efficient, demand for it increases, which in turn leads to more consumption. Think about it for a moment. If something becomes more efficient and affordable, it becomes more attractive to consumers and industries, resulting in greater usage and ultimately more demand. Here's how this applies to software developers and why the industry will likely grow. Stage 1 is the lowered barrier to entry. With AI making it easier and cheaper to develop software, more people can now create applications for specific needs, even for niche or experimental products that were previously too expensive to justify. This means that more businesses can afford to develop their own software, which leads to stage 2, increased use cases for software. With AI enabling faster and cheaper development, businesses can launch more startups, apps, platforms, and products. As software becomes embedded across more industries, the demand for software grows, and with it, the need for more software engineers. But why would we need more software engineers if AI can do the coding? Simple. Software engineers are needed to supervise the process. They're required to debug code, ensure that AI-generated code is correct, design software architecture, and handle specific edge cases or complex logic that AI might struggle with. We'll also need engineers to refine AI models, which is an increasingly in-demand skill. So, while AI may take over some aspects of development, the need for human expertise is far from over. In fact, the lowered barrier to entry means more people are now developing apps. If you want to improve or scale your app to the next level, you'll need a skilled developer who understands the back end and knows how to integrate everything properly. This is something I've seen firsthand while building automations and software for my businesses. I've had to consult with software developers to address rare or complex use cases that AI simply can't manage. Even though companies are pushing toward fully autonomous systems to cut costs, I believe the entire ecosystem will continue to create significant demand for software developers. It's not just my opinion either. Apple's recent job postings for software engineers have called for experience with AI agent-based frameworks like Crew AI and LangChain. This trend indicates that companies are looking for specialists in these areas. If you're a software developer or have experience in this field, you're now more valuable than ever. This aligns with what we've heard in conversations on the YC YouTube channel. where it was suggested that software developers could actually have more leverage moving forward.
Now it is actually more leverage. It is far more leverage to know how to code than ever before.
That's exactly
and it's
right.
actually even more important, and it will make you way more powerful. Like, you don't have to be all the way in the weeds on everything. You actually are going to be able to like orchestrate this giant army of agents. And I think of Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, just like, you know, like learning this new magical sort of ability, and like,
I love that.
you know, suddenly all the brooms are like, you know, walking and talking and dancing, and it's this incredible menagerie of being able to build whatever the heck you want, whenever you want, just like literally from any computer, from any web browser.
Yeah, I try to come up with like a Moore's law type thing, where it's like the return on learning code is like doubling every 6 months or something like that. So learning code a little bit in 2020 was not that useful, because you would still you get blocked. You wouldn't know how to deploy something, you wouldn't know how to configure something. Let's go to 2023 with ChatGPT. Learn to code just a little bit will get you fairly far, because ChatGPT can help you. And then 2024, learn to code a little bit is a massive leverage, because we have agents like this and others, and there's a lot of really cool tools out there like Cursor and others that will get you super far by just like having a little bit of coding, and just extend that forward. Like 6 months later, you're gonna have even more power. So programmers are just on this massive trajectory of increased power.
This video presents a bit of a 50-50 perspective. On one hand, you have the CEO saying that there will be no more programmers writing our code. While that may be true, I can assure you that where we're heading suggests that software engineers may not be engineering software in the traditional sense anymore. In fact, it's likely that software engineers will be managing multiple AI agent systems. You'll be orchestrating AI agent swarms, placing them in scenarios that allow them to complete tasks at 10 times the speed of a traditional software engineer. That's the direction things are moving in. You can see this shift happening with Apple's recent job postings, which now require software developers to have experience with AI agent-based frameworks like CrewAI or LangChain. Additionally, the World Economic Forum is predicting that the fastest growing job sector is software applications and developers. This is why I say it's a nuanced point that many people missed. A lot of people simply think, oh, software developers. But trust me, as long as you can learn AI workflows and agent management, you'll have a lot of leverage. Essentially, you'll be managing digital employees who will accomplish far more than before. That's my honest opinion. Software developers may not be writing code anymore, but they'll be orchestrating AI agents, and that's where we're headed. I hope this video has helped clarify this scenario, as I've seen many videos that miss this key nuance. They just haven't recognized the important factors that are already in play. So if you found value in this video, I hope it was insightful, and I'll see you in the next one.